That's a really good question. And maybe I can answer it by telling you, as somebody who writes fiction and nonfiction, why those are separate things for me. They have, to my way of thinking, the ethical relationship that is set up between me and the reader is one thing in nonfiction and another thing entirely in fiction. In nonfiction, the basis of all nonfiction is factual truth, and how the individual writer puts those pieces together, successfully or not, is an indication of the skill and the level of intelligence and imagination that is there. But here's what's important in nonfiction. If I tell you as a nonfiction writer that there are giraffes in Ngorongoro crater in Tanzania, that has to be bankable for you as a reader. Otherwise, I've broken the contract. So, if you think, really? Are there giraffes? How could they get down into the crater? In fact, they're not. There are no giraffes in the Ngorongoro crater. You need to be able to go to a library or someplace that I don't control and verify those facts. So, when I said earlier about the relationship between trusting something, becoming vulnerable to it, and therefore achieving intimacy, what I want in a piece of nonfiction is for the reader to trust me. And in order to earn the reader's trust, I've got to make myself vulnerable or transparent in some way in order for both of us to achieve this intimate relationship. So here's, let's say for the sake of argument that you're an expert on wildlife in Tanzania, and you're reading my essay about wildlife in Ngorongoro crater, and I make a mistake. If my attitude in the piece of nonfiction is respectful, and you can sense that, one way I usually say this is, as a reader, does the writer know that I'm there? You know, that sometimes we've all read things and thought, does this person who's telling me this story understand that I'm reading it, or am I just here being lectured to? Another way to understand this, Russell Banks, a novelist, and I are friends, were walking along one day. I said to Russell, you know, I'd much rather be the reader's companion than the reader's authority. And he said, oh yes, exactly. So that's a fiction writer and a nonfiction, and me with a nonfiction background in some ways, talking to each other about the importance of a relationship with the reader. So in nonfiction, it's based on factual truth. The truth has to be verifiable outside of anything I control. Fiction is based on emotional truth. If I write a story about being in Lincoln and visiting in Lincoln and walking down the street with you and we pass underneath the limbs of eucalyptus trees, somebody who's living here is saying, I don't know about that. But it's going to be very hard to upend the story because I made a factual error in a piece of fiction. You're going to make a decision as a reader and say, I'm with it. I feel enough coming off this page that recognizes I too am intelligent, I too have an imagination, that I'm willing to let something like that slide. Because in fiction, having all the facts right is a plus, but it doesn't really end up being a minus. In fiction, or in nonfiction rather, it does end up being a minus, especially if the attitude, the tone of voice of the writer is, I know and you don't. I mean, who wants to listen to that anyway? But if I get that off the page and then I see from things that I know that you're wrong, that's as far as I'm reading it.